Welcome to The Backstory, a podcast from the North Dakota News Cooperative that takes an in-depth look at the stories we're reporting for you. I'm Sabrina Halverson, CEO of the North Dakota News Cooperative. Joining me is Michael Standaert, our lead reporter. Michael, the story we're talking about today has the headline of Biography Celebrates Life of North Dakota's Longest-Serving Supreme Court Chief Justice. And what I really liked about this article is this is one of those that really gets to the heart of our community. We talk about somebody who is well known in the community, who is well liked in the community, but also who really has served the community. And when I say community, I really mean the entire state of North Dakota. And honestly, somebody that I was not very familiar with until reading your article. So tell me a little bit about what you knew and what you came to know through this.
Yeah, and I wasn't even really all that familiar with Jerry VandeWalle, the Supreme Court Chief Justice who has served 45 years in the Supreme Court here in North Dakota. He had a 65-year career in state government. Many of those earlier years were with the Attorney General's office. I mean, I had seen his name. I had heard, a couple years ago when he stepped down. That was in the news a lot. And I would occasionally hear something about how nice of a person he was and how, committed to service he was. And then, I got the book that is out about him, Call Me Jerry, and started reading through, and I became pretty fascinated with him. I had a chance to go sit and visit with him. His health is a bit, not so great now. He can still speak. He's still very, very bright. And it was just fascinating kind of hearing him talk himself about, growing up in Noonan, North Dakota, up in the Northwest part of the state, how that really shaped his attitude towards life and people and community. He grew up in a very tight-knit community there in Noonan. It was, and this was something I really didn't know about, and something that was pretty interesting to talk to him as well, that the community was mostly made up of Belgian immigrants, Flemish immigrants, which I had the same background, but my community was in Illinois. So that's something I had a pretty fun conversation with him about. There are not many of us out there. So, they came over in the late 1800s, early 1900s, similar to where I grew up. So it was pretty interesting to talk to him directly about that. But he's just, everyone you talk to about him just says how kind of a person he is, how approachable. One story Jack McDonald had told me about him that didn't make it into the story was about they would help volunteer at this kind of a food kitchen, I think back in the 70s or 80s or maybe in the 90s. And he was just, normal Jerry, and, they would go into this kitchen and the lady, handing out aprons, didn't know that he was Chief Justice, and, just said, "Here, put this apron on." And he would just very happily do it and go about his duties. And he didn't really have any airs about him, and was just, dedicated to service of his, state, people around him.
And it wasn't just the community. He was also very dedicated to his family as well, right?
One thing that really comes out in the book and in talking with people was how dedicated he was to his mother, who lived with him for, I think, around 35 years. He took care of her after his father died, and after her health just started to deteriorate. She couldn't live up in Noonan anymore, so she moved in with him in Bismarck. And, that was very important part of his life. He spent so much time, dedicated to his work and to her. He never did marry. So that's, he's kind of married to service and married to, service to the state, which is, it just, comes out in the book quite a bit. And then just in people that knew him and that know him very well. And I think people would probably look forward to going to the Heritage Center on February 2nd to hear more about the book and hear directly from him. He'll be there as well as Cecile Werman, who wrote the book. So yeah, that's Jerry VandeWalle, and he's set a very high bar from what many people say, and I don't know if anyone else can reach that bar.
So those are some of the stories that I love hearing about because, when you have a 1,300 word article, you can get a lot in there, but some of these stories, you can't get everything in there. So hearing about like the apron, how he just went and served, and his high station in the state wasn't a factor in that. He was just here to serve people. And it sounds like he's carried that throughout his whole life. And just the chance to read about that, that service leader, that servant leader, I guess, is a type of leadership. And it sounds like this is what he really strives and has always tried to be.
Yeah, and so humble. And I think, from reading, I've only been able to make it through half the book, really reading it and then skim through a lot of other parts so far. I only got the book last week. So, he just is so humble and it seemed, just talking to him, from him, it's like he doesn't feel like he deserves any of the praise. He's just like put in his work. He's done a solid job. I don't think he really feels like he knows what to do with the accolades. I think he appreciates it, of course, but it's who he is showed up in his work. I think that's what really comes out in the book and in talking with him and also just people that know him very well.
Yeah. So the book is out now, or is it coming out in February?
So it will be officially released on February 2nd. There are copies available online. People can also go to the Heritage Center here in Bismarck and get copies of the book. Another thing that came out from reading the book and in speaking with him is kind of how nonpartisan he was and how that helped his stature as Chief Justice. He's a very fair person. And this was something I asked him about too, because there's been all these issues with politicizing the courts and defining prospective judges or current judges as liberal or conservative just because they were picked by a certain president or governor or whoever. That's very problematic to him because judges should judge fairly and according to the law, and according to the law is how they read the law. So that's something that's very concerning to him. And I'm not sure if he has very optimistic view on how that's going to go. He did say, he kind of wonders if these things kind of ebb and flow through time. So, we'll have to see where that goes. But, he serves as a prime example of a, fair and true nonpartisan judge.
Yeah, that is really neat to see and to hear people still advocating for, because we do need that kind of nonpartisan judges, just like we need nonpartisan news, like what we strive to do. And
Yeah.
it's very important for our country in general. But, I just love this book being out about just such a good North Dakotan and such an example of what the state really stands for. That is really, it's heartwarming to see.
Yeah, it definitely is.
All right. So again, that book will be available now. If you want, for our listeners, if they want to find the book, you can find information on how to locate that in the article. The article, of course, is available on our website and through our newspaper partners, and it is headlined, "Biography Celebrates the Life of North Dakota's Longest-Serving Supreme Court Chief Justice." You can read that story on our website at newscoopnd.org or in one of our local newspaper partners. For the North Dakota News Cooperative, I'm Sabrina Halverson. This has been The Backstory.